So, yep, three, two, and here we go. Welcome to the Lovecraft eZine podcast. I'm Mike Davis, and our guest today
Wait,
is,
you're Mike Davis?
Oh, wait, is this the Lovecraft eZine?
yeah, it's Mike
Oh
Davis.
man,
Wrong.
this is
You've known me almost a decade now, Pete.
Wait, are you related to that other Mike Davis?
the good Mike Davis,
Other Mike
Yeah.
Davis?
The football player?
the serial
No,
killer.
it's just a coincidence. Yeah, there is a serial killer by the name of Mike Davis.
I knew it. There always is.
Yeah, no, it's just a coincidence, Pete.
You know, no one in this country can pronounce my name right. I mean, it's
Really?
Rollick, not Rawleek, not Rawlecki. It's Rollick.
At least your name isn't Mike Davis.
Well, there's nothing wrong with Mike Davis. The name.
Wait. Let's not jump.
Talking about the name, yeah.
The name. There's
There,
nothing
there
wrong with the name Mike Davis.
was nothing wrong with that name till I was 41, and that no talent ass clown became famous and rushed 275 yards on 52 carries and 2 touchdowns.
Well, why don't you just go by Michael instead of Mike?
Why should I change? He's the one who sucks.
Well, you have a point there.
Now, any of you out there who did not get that Office Space skit reference are hereby educated. Matt's got a really puzzled expression on his face, Pete.
Yeah, well,
That's the way he always looks.
yes.
Did you get a haircut, Pete?
No, I got assaulted by my wife again. And
This is how he responds to our brilliant skit. Did you get a haircut, Pete?
But yes, I got a haircut again.
That movie is comedy gold. It's right up there with Mystery Men.
It is. I love Office Space.
Yeah.
It even occurs in the same universe as Star Wars.
What
Because
does?
The Mandalorian had a reference to Office Space.
Oh, really? Oh.
Those forms, those TPS forms, I think they're called.
Yeah, the
Yep.
TPS reports. Yeah.
They use them in the Empire.
I remember
yeah.
that. My
That
wife
was in the next to last episode of this season.
Yeah. Please don't correct me. It sickens me. That's a Mystery Man line. All right. Anyway, as I was saying before Pete rudely interrupted me, our guest today is EFFRESS. Hey, Ina, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you for having me, everybody.
Thanks for being on the show. Let's do introductions. I got a couple things to cover, and then let's talk to EFFRESS. Yeah, Ina is a writer of short stories, and I have no doubt that she's going to go far. So, Rick, why don't you start?
A Rick Lay writer.
Rick just contributed a never before published story, as did Pete Rollick a few weeks ago, to the $10 and up Patreons. So this is just another perk for being a Lovecraft eZine Patreon. The link is in the show notes, or you can just Google Lovecraft eZine Patreon. So thank you, Rick, for doing that.
You're welcome.
You with the coat and the, yeah, what's your name? Oh, Matt Carpenter. Okay.
Hey, hi there. Are
Yeah.
you all familiar with Manny the Uncanny? She is an artist based on the West Coast. She's also a mystic, and she will do card readings for you. But she is slowly creating a Dreamlands comic called Orphany. There are 2 issues.
Oh, yeah.
She didn't do the layout, but she wrote it and all. So if you want both of the current issues in the Orphany saga, all you have to do is send an email to ezineprizes@gmail.com and put Price, Price, the author's last name, in the subject heading. And in a few weeks, we will have a drawing, and some lucky person will win both of these.
Yeah, and if you're watching or listening for the first time, we do this every week. Matt's taken over this, and I really appreciate it. So, Melissa, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Melissa. I'm a horror nerd. I also have a book review website, so dunwichReview.com, where I just review horror, weird fiction, and dark fantasy.
Thank you. And Pete Rollick, if that is indeed your real name.
Pete Rollick, book reviewer, writer, editor, alcoholic.
The last one is the most important.
Yeah.
John Langan.
John Langan. I write stories, and I teach high school English. And I'm not sure which one of those is more horrifying.
Well, you're starting to corrupt people. Our guest told me on the video test the other night that she walked into a bookstore and bought a book called The Fisherman by John Langan. Isn't
was
that
a
right?
mistake.
You know?
That's not The Good Fisherman, which teaches you how to fish.
Yeah, you're not going to learn how to fish. You might want to take it back.
I have it here. It's really good.
Oh my God.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you.
not done yet.
Oh, that's why you're saying it's very good.
No, it's really good. I had
Stop right there.
No, I'd never read your stuff before, besides in weird horror, and I really like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now you tell him if I'm wrong or right, because if I'm lying about this or not, you know, because I like to give John a lot of shit. But did I not go on and on about what a talented writer he is, and that I loved his story Anchor, which was in Autumn Cthulhu, and I love The Fisherman, and I just love his writing in general. So.
Yes, I'm now the proud owner of the Cthulhu collection.
Autumn
yes.
Cthulhu. Yeah.
And then he stopped and he said, "Oh, wait, that's Laird Barron I'm talking about." Yeah.
Yeah, best title ever, except for maybe Dark Blood Comes from the Feet. Andy Kaufman, Creeping Through the Trees.
That is true. There's some good stuff in that book.
Thank you.
There is. There's. I mean, leaving my, accepting myself from just, but there's some really terrific stuff in that book.
Yeah. I was very pleased, and there will be an Autumn Cthulhu too. But it's been a little rough last couple of years, but it's going to happen. So no worries.
I do hear that The Last Dangerous Visions is going to come out.
I did hear that.
Same thing. Yeah.
And they've gone even longer than I have. So.
Yes.
Who's going to edit it now that Holland's dead?
No one
John,
good
did
enough.
you hear who the editor was?
I haven't. All I heard was that it's rumored that it might come out, but then I think some of the writers who wrote stuff for it are like, oh, I hope not, because what seemed to be very edgy and whatever, and I don't know when Harlan was assembling that in the 70s and 80s is maybe not so edgy anymore.
No.
Yeah. No, it was then. The Lovecraft eZine Press has a new book out by Raven Dag Morgan, and the book is called The Dog, and I have linked to it in the show notes. You can get it on print and in Kindle. You can buy it on Kindle, or you can, if you got Kindle Unlimited, you can read it that way. So the link is there in the show notes. Before we go on, I have a couple of bones to pick with Matthew Carpenter. The first one is Matt does a Lovecraft eZine movie night every night starting at 8:30 Central Time, roughly. Matt, please tell the audience what you showed last night and why you would be crazy enough to do this.
It is by popular demand. I listen to my people, unlike you. They elected
These
to
people
watch.
know what they were voting in when they got it. They have no reason to complain.
We watched Santa Jaws.
Oh my God.
I mean, I missed it.
It is seasonal. It's cheering. There's holiday music.
It's a timely lesson about love and loss and.
No, there's a shark. A Christmas shark.
Is it a land shark?
Well,
Candygram.
It ends up with a big pointy like candy cane sticking out of it like a horn, so it can skewer people.
Well, thank you, Mr. Spoiler Alert. Now I'm never watching Santa Jaws.
Yeah, I was gonna say, now I can't even watch it. You ruined it. You ruined the ending.
But no, it's you watch it for the dialogue and the characters, okay, and you stay for the special effects.
Okay.
And there's another Christmas tradition that we enjoy here on planet Earth, and it's called gift giving. And some months ago, this dot, you can't see this if you're listening later, but it's basically an emoji, a little tiny pillow emoji. Fits in the palm of my hand. That's about how big it is. The one I have is he's sleeping. You can tell that because he's got a couple of Z's on him there. Well, for whatever reason, it freaked the hell out of Matt Carpenter. I don't know why. I don't know why this would scare you. So I packaged up the other one and sent it in the mail. Would you like to show the audience your?
The reason I don't like it, Mike, is because of cooties. You know how long I had to fumigate this?
That's not why you didn't like it on the video. You were you were trembling. I don't know. So anyway,
it's probably just a fit of old age. Never mind.
You know, it just occurred to me today, actually, that this is the last show of 2020. You know,
Thank God.
Thank God. Wait.
No, yeah, no kidding. Oh, you mean 2020? You meant? Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Now I have on a nice note, I have received, and this is for all of you. I've received several very nice emails that essentially say the same thing. I'm just going to read one. I wanted to. This is from Danielle Didier, but there were others very similar. I wanted to thank you and the other panelists of the Lovecraft eZine podcast for the many years of content, but also during COVID for the sense of normalcy it brings. I know you have said that your goal was to create a community, and especially during these times, you have definitely succeeded in making the relative isolation seem a little less lonely. Thank you for all you do, and have a happy holiday. And like I always say, it'd be a pretty boring show if it was just me. So this is directed at all of you guys. So I'm really glad that in a really crappy year that we've helped people feel less alone. So that's nice to hear. So anyway, EFFRESS recently bought The Fisherman, but we won't dwell. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I live in LA. I used to be a speechwriter, and that's how I started writing. I volunteered on a campaign, and I wanted to write, and I realized that I loved writing, but maybe not in that form. And
well, I can see why you moved to horror from there.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a stretch. But writing, it keeps me sane. So it kind of saves my life.
Do you write every day? Every few days? Just
I'm a really slow writer. So, but yeah, I sit down every day, and sometimes, honestly, it's a couple of sentences. Sometimes I'm editing. Like I'll go back and have to have the whole draft to that point perfect until I can continue and write a new scene.
Okay.
So I'm very inefficient.
Can I just mention that a really fabulous weird fiction writer, Caitlin Kiernan, writes in the same pace. Like she would post on her blog, I wrote 700 words today, or like 1,500, and that was a lot for her. So just glacial pace, but plugging away at it and polishing as she goes. So there are other authors very similar.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and there's no right and wrong, as in all art. So
Well, I was going to say, I feel like your writing is very dense because you read it and there's so many layers you can take it on. So the stories are shorter, but there's a lot to process even reading it. So I can only imagine the writing process can take a long time, because it's like, you can tell with the stories, you can't just like, from what I read, like they can be taken on multiple levels. So each one's very complex.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. That's probably why it takes me so long. And I'm actually trying to undensify the process and make it a little more straightforward.
Well, some can be and some don't have to be, right? You know, wherever the story might lead you. And Melissa, you're not wrong. Allowed me to read a upcoming flash fiction story. It's going to be coming out in 2021 in Crack the Spine annual print anthology. Do I have that right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is flash fiction, so this is a paragraph. And Melissa, I really was amazed at how much in one paragraph was packed in there, the varying layers. So that's a really keen observation, and that particular example is a really good example too, because it's just it is flash fiction. There's not that many words. Every word counts, you know. And I loved it, by the way. So as I told you.
Thank you. That one was a poem, and which got rejected a bunch of times. And when I saw the call for submissions, the theme was leaving a cult, and that was what the poem was about. So I just reformatted it, and it still worked in the new format of prose. So I'm glad that you liked it.
Yeah, it's called "There's No Such Thing as Unindoctrination." Did I hear you right yesterday when you said that that's the general theme of the Crack the Spine anthology?
For this year, yeah,
this year.
for this coming year.
Okay, is it all flash fiction, or just some, or is it a mix-up?
Yeah, Crack the Spine is a flash and microfiction. It's an online magazine, and so they just publish this one themed issue once a year.
Yeah, well, if you're online, that is smart to publish flash fiction, because the average human's attention span is greater when is longer when they're sitting down reading a book, as opposed to, scrolling through web pages. So yeah, that's smart. I think I had heard the name before, but if I knew who they were, it escaped me. But yeah, it's a very good piece of fiction. Then I've got a list in the show notes, whether you're watching now or later or listening later, I will include them, of what you have published so far. Story called Defiance in the Wrong, United Kingdom. Tell us a bit about Liquid Air. That was in Night Script 3, which says a lot about it. And also, which says even more, Best Horror of the Year 10. So can you tell me, I don't want to ask a boring cliche question like, where do you get your ideas? But I do want to ask, what was the genesis of this particular story, Liquid Air?
Actually, my husband is a real idea generator for me, just because he's so strange. And he's done, like, he's had 80 lives, and in one life he was a neon sign maker. So I was always intrigued by what it meant to be a neon sign maker. So I interviewed him, and then I did some research on the science of neon, and then everything just snowballed from there. I don't really outline my stories or know where they're going to go. That's probably why they also take me so long.
and then I'm going to list these audibly, but they are in the show notes. So, a Defiance in the Wrong, United Kingdom, Liquid Air and Night Script 3, as I mentioned, and Best Horror of the Year 10. A Blind Cupping in Santa Monica Review, Birthright in Spirits Unwrapped, which is Lethe Press, edited by Daniel Brom. Great cover. I think I thought I had it close by, but I don't. But you can pick that up. Pick up Spirits Unwrapped. Some great stories in there, including Ina's.
I have it here.
Oh, good.
Spirits Unwrapped.
Yeah, great cover. So I've said a couple of times that you're the first writer I've ever read, and I've been reading horror a long time, where I'm reading a short story and I'm like going, what the fuck? And that story was Nervous System. Have any of the rest of you read this?
Yeah, I really liked that. Like it was like a lot different than because I read a few of the short stories, and that one I felt like was different, in that it was like you knew what it was about. Like some of the other ones, I think there's like some layers, like more subtle layers, but that one was just kind of like in your face, and it was really good. Like I was kind of feeling like I wasn't sure where it was going to go. It was just interesting, and talking about earlier, you were saying your husband was a neon sign maker. I just think these stories that I've read of yours, there's a very the people in the stories have very odd careers or like occupations, and it's stuff that you would never see. It's like almost like a behind the scene looks of how other people in interesting occupations live. I guess I like that.
Thank you. Thanks. I wish all of my I wish all of my stories came out more like that story, because it's more straightforward.
I like some of the other ones. Like Blind Cupping, I really liked, and I feel like there needs to be more coffee themed horror. I feel like, but that, you definitely, I feel like the endings can be taken like different ways, but I think Nervous System was it's like, I think it was probably very accessible. Like I like all of them though, all the stories that I read of yours.
Thanks a lot.
Malady of Laughter was kind of, it falls into that category of never explain anything. And yet it works so well because the protagonist sort of just is completely oblivious to what's going on around him. And yet he seems to be central to everything that's happening in the world. And this slow catastrophe that's unfolding in his life. Or more importantly, in the lives around him.
Yeah, he's definitely oblivious. And that was, something I wanted to explore, is someone who is so completely unaware of themselves and their actions and, with a faulty memory. So I appreciate that you understood, what I was getting at.
Yeah, no, as a man who's been married 5 times, I know what it's I saw that, Melissa. I know what it's like to be oblivious.
You really understand women, Pete.
Exactly. But yeah, just to see what's happening in this story and that he's just completely clueless and his behaviors are so reprehensible, yet he sees nothing wrong with it. And sort of, I can imagine some of the other characters giving him that side-eye glance. Like, did you just really do that? And he's just sort of like, yeah, what are you talking about? Yeah, it's perfectly normal to do this. And yeah, it's sort of, it's a slow take into a person who just has no clue of what's going on in their lives. You really pulled it off.
Thank you.
Since you brought up that story, I don't see it on the list. Has it
It's
been?
not published yet.
Okay.
I sent it to you because
Yeah.
you asked
Yeah.
for my work.
And do you have a home for that yet?
Not yet. It's out for. It's being considered. I don't know what will happen to it.
It'll
Don't you
land
hate
somewhere.
Most of my stories are rejected at least 40 times.
There's a lesson there for all the up and coming writers, right there. So,
there's a great story. A couple of years ago, somebody set the Yearling to a publishing house, and it was rejected as Drek, that it should never been published. And then they reminded them that this was the book that won the Pulitzer Prize, and your own publishing house published it.
That's amazing. I didn't know that story.
Oh, yeah. And the world, John knows this. The world is just full of terrible, terrible stories about, writers that were rejected left and right. And then once they got published, Confederacy of Dunces, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it can give you as a writer hope, or it can make you despair. To think about how many writers, Melville, when he dies in 1891, nobody really remember. Like he was a guy who wrote a book about living with cannibals in the South Pacific. That's what he was remembered for. And then 1920, for whatever weird reason, everybody rediscovers Moby Dick, and now we think, oh, he's one of the great American writers. Same thing with Poe. Poe dies in disgrace, and makes matters worse by choosing a guy who actively hated him to write his biography, which is kind of weirdly funny to me. But now we see. Yeah, well, now we see these, and I'm thinking about how many other writers, Kate Chopin and that, who just
Lovecraft.
They died thinking. When Keats dies, he the epitaph he gives for himself is "Here lies one whose name was writ in water," and it's astonishing, right? You read, you're like, how could this guy possibly have thought this about himself, right? So on the one hand, what we're doing, I guess, is we're playing the long game, as it were. But that can be tough on the, when you're just trying to make it day to day. And you've gotten 40 rejections for something, and you're like, look, I know I'm playing the long game, but man, how about a little acceptance in the short game? How about,
the other thing to bear in mind, John, is no matter how successful or famous or unsuccessful or unfamous you are in your lifetime or after your lifetime, like Melville, there's a line there's a paragraph in Cloud Atlas, the book, and it reminds us that no matter what, someday there'll become a time where we're not known. It doesn't matter how famous we were. And the paragraph is, how vulgar this hankering after immortality, how vain, how false. Composers are merely scribblers of cave paintings. One writes music and art and writes, obviously, one writes music because winter is eternal, and because if one didn't, the wolves and the blizzards would be at one's throat all the sooner, which makes me think of what Ina said at the beginning of the show today about writing keeping her sane. And I think it's important to bear in mind, there's this story about, what was it, Conan, and I forget who else. And Conan's like, I'm just this late night host.
I thought you meant Conan the Barbarian.
No.
Yeah, I was like, where are you going with that?
Conan
He meant Conan the comedian.
I have at least 3 people on this podcast. That's where their mind immediately meant, and I should have remembered that. No, Conan O'Brien, he says to a filmmaker, I wish I could remember his name, but I'm old. He goes, you know, you make these films, they're going to last forever, and all I do is every night I interview guests, and you know, it's not important a year later. And the guy says to him, he goes, all of us are in the same boat. I'm paraphrasing. He goes, at some point in time, all of our graves go untended. And I try to keep that in mind. You know, I want to create just like we all want to create. I want to make a difference in some way. I want to put a smile on somebody's face, or maybe make them think, or whatever, you know, I can do. But there's that sense of, look, you know, it's all going to end anyway, so don't take it too seriously, you know.
Yeah, and the other thing for anyone out there who's in the early stages of their writing career, like I am, or who, you know, who's been afraid and wants to start, the way I look at it is the magazines and journals and anthologies that finally do accept my stories, they, like you mentioned, Night Script, that changed everything for me, because I stumbled on that. I didn't know anything about journals, and I stumbled on that call for submissions online somewhere. And through that, I was in the book, my story was in the book with Daniel Brom, David Surface, and Julia Rust. And then they invited me to do a reading in New York at the Lovecraft bar, which is no longer operational, unfortunately. But I met them, and that show was on the Outer Dark. And then I met Anya and Scott through that. And that story made it into Best Horror. So I feel like there's a reason and a path for each story. And even though it may take longer and it might be like a convoluted path, there's always something to be gotten from the experience.
It's really nice.
Can I ask you?
Yeah, please, Matt, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? This is a little bit taking a step back. It's okay. So you say you joined a campaign and became a speechwriter, but you know, to become a speechwriter, you need to like get a foot in the door too. I was wondering if you could tell us about like what was your like Bridget, our panelist who isn't here, she'd say your superhero origin story.
Exactly.
Going back to like maybe when you were younger, like what interested you in writing and how did you get into it? And how do you walk into a campaign and get to be a speechwriter? That just...
And don't forget to tell us about Lennon.
About what?
Lennon.
Oh yeah, I'll tell you about Lennon. So, well...
Because I'll bet it ties in with Matt's question.
Yeah, it does. So I was born in Ukraine, and English is not my first language. And I was young when we moved here. I was 5.
My mother's Ukrainian.
Oh, great. Okay.
My
Nice.
grandmother's Ukrainian.
Excellent. Okay, so
it's like great. There's other Ukrainians.
Yeah. So, and when we came to this country, I also had to learn. And not only did I learn English, but I learned Hebrew because our parents sent my sister and me to a religious school, like a day school where we spoke Hebrew half the day.
And you were how old when you moved to the United States?
I was 5.
Okay.
I was almost 6.
Okay.
And so immediately language became, you know, something like I knew that English would empower me because people made fun of me and my sister constantly. And we taught ourselves to read from watching road signs in the back of our parents' car. We spent a lot of time in the car. My parents were, you know, looking for work, you know. So so language became this empowering thing, and I was always scared to speak. I'm still scared to speak, but much more so when I was younger. And I knew that that was my way of communicating and excelling. So that was something I always pursued when I was little. And then in my 20s, in my late 20s, there was a recall of the current governor, and Arnold Schwarzenegger ran for governor. So I knew somebody that was working on advertising for his campaign, and I said, I really want to write. I know I want to write. I don't know what I've been doing all these years, but I know I want to be a writer. And he put me in touch with the campaign, and I wrote some samples. And when he became governor, they hired people very quickly. So I just was in the right place at the right time.
So it does come back to Conan after all.
Absolutely, it does.
I was just
Good
going to say
point.
that. Like, it's come full circle.
Right.
Wow.
So wait, it's like, but writing a speech, a lot of those, like, do you have to have, like, don't they have to have a few, like, set to go if something happens, and then they're often made to deliver a political point in the midst of something? So isn't that really kind of on the spot writing?
Well, yes, he did do a lot of ad-libbing, and he was really good. He is really good at ad-libbing. And but we had to create a lot of templates for him to deliver and his surrogates to deliver around the state.
Did you get to meet him? Or
just a couple of times. Actually, I had more interaction with Maria Shriver, who sometimes asked for our writing services.
Oh, that's nice. Tell me, if it's not too personal, do you think in English now, or do you think in several languages, or?
I think in English.
You think in English? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think in English. I curse in English now. I mean, cursing's like, that says who you are.
Those were the first English words you learned, right? Besides stop and yield.
Yeah.
Road signs.
Well, there was a lot of cursing in our house in other languages, but
I think you have a fascinating background, and I consider, before we go on, I just want to say that I consider part of the job of Lovecraft eZine, meaning all of us, is not only to, okay, our friend Laird Barron, he's popular, let's say he's got a new book, and let's have him on and talk about it so that we can remind people. Or John Langan, he's popular, let's remind the people of Children of the Fang, that sort of thing. But also at the same time, to notice talented up-and-coming writers, if that term doesn't seem derogatory at all, starting out writers. I'm sure it's hard to feel like you're starting out if you've been rejected on a single story 40 times, but
eternally up and coming.
Yes. Yeah. Until one day you're an overnight success,
right.
and you no longer take my calls.
But that's probably how it is.
But I just consider it my job and our job to, hey, the people listening and watching, 95% of them out there are like, all right, who is this writer? Who is this lady? She sounds great from what they're describing of her stories. I need to check out her fiction. And that's the point of having you on today. If there's any single point, that is the point. And for people to track down your work, and that's why I wanted you to give me that list, which, again, I've included in the show notes. And I'm sure there'll come a time when all of those are gathered into a collection. But in the meantime, folks, track down these stories. You're really going to be happy that you did. I mean, and Melissa, I hear what you're saying, and I don't disagree about nervous system being perhaps more straightforward than some of
Yeah, I
Ina's
would
other
say it's probably the
stories.
most accessible of the ones I read. I didn't read all of them. I mean,
Yeah,
I like the other ones too. They're like pretty much like I would say not just horror, but like elevate to literature. I mean, they're complex and really thoughtful.
that is exactly right.
Nervous system is fun though, I have to say. I
Yeah,
really liked. Yeah.
they elevate to literature, and every time I'm reading
Yeah.
an Ina Effra short story, I think, okay, I've got to read it again once or twice more
Yeah.
to get everything in there. Having said all that, nervous system, um, there are still some other layers in there. There's this girl who's, correct me if I'm wrong, just sort of running away from her family. And if I read it right, and I might not be, but if I read it right, she wants to throw off that influence, and it's very hard for her to do so. Would you just briefly comment on that and tell me if I'm right or wrong, or if
Yeah,
Mike, it's just a story about octopi? Shut
no,
up.
you're absolutely right. Initially the story was much longer and there was a big family component to it. And then I realized it was two different stories, but it's still about, you really can't escape your family, no matter how hard you try. And but when I wrote it, it was the first time I attempted to write anything remotely, like really autobiographical, not just little bits and pieces. And I sobbed when I wrote all the parts that ended up coming out of the story. Not all of them, but most of them. But yeah, it was definitely about how hard it is to be a part of a family.
That sobbing. I tend to write more nonfiction than fiction. Um, I wouldn't call myself a writer. I would just say I write sometimes. But this is mostly what I do. But I do know the feeling of writing something. I wrote something a few weeks back, showed it to Linda Addison about depression, and she loved it, and I put it on the Lovecraft eZine, and I'm tearing up as I'm writing it, and then I'm tearing up again while a giant like Linda Addison is telling me that she actually got the chills and reading this. So when you tell me that the tears are coming as you're writing with nervous system and how it came out, I see where you're coming from, and I really, I don't know. I've seen the theme in several of your stories. I've certainly seen it in the flash fiction story, no such thing as unindoctrination. And it made me think of that scene in Penny Dreadful, which I sent you the image where she says, "Do you believe the past can return?" Vanessa Ives says that. And no, I'm not going to say this right, but it's Sabine. Is that correct? He says, "More than that, it never leaves us." And Vanessa says, "Never." And he says, "It is who we are." You know, and I hope that's not true. And then at the same time, I see how true that is. That you have to, no matter how hard you try and throw it off, you can't. It's hard to. So, and you've got a very interesting past. Can you tell us about Lennon being your grandfather, if that's all right?
So yes, so he was he was everybody's grandfather in the former Soviet bloc.
And you're
Even
4 and 5, and you believe this.
Yeah, even in nursery school and kindergarten, we were led to believe it was indoctrinated in us that Lenin was our actual grandfather. And even, as little as 3, 4, 5 in our school, you'd have like the lady with the gray dress, and every day we little children had to stand under this. Every place had this mass mass reproduced portrait of Lenin hanging in every building, every government building. And we children had to stand under it in silence, and we worshiped him. And when we finally left in 78, they were letting, they let a lot of Jewish people out. And we got lucky. We waited in Italy for a few months for our documents. And every statue I saw, I asked my father if that was my grandfather. Is that my Dedushka Lenin is what it was. And finally he wasn't scared anymore. He got the courage to tell me the truth. And I was furious with him, and I stopped talking to him for a while. And that was just at 5 years old.
Right. Again, very young. And
so if you can imagine a lifetime, people moving here in middle age after being lied to their whole lives.
Yeah. And, a long time ago, but in a way it isn't, because those formative years, they really rubber stamp you. I guess that's probably not the best term, but you can't get away from it. It's hard to get away from it, I should say.
What city were you from?
Chernivtsi in Ukraine.
My family is from Dobromil. I think that's in Poland now, but way back when it wasn't.
You know what this reminds me of, Matt?
What?
Crocodile Dundee, when he lands in New York and he sees a couple of pedestrians walking by, in the city of 8 million people, and he goes, "Oh yeah, Crocodile Dundee." He goes, "I'll be in town for a week or two. Probably see you around." So.
Okay, so when you were speech writing, that was some time ago.
Mm-hmm.
That job, I guess, just went away or whatever. And then what did you do in terms of literary endeavors in the meantime before you decided to go to short stories?
I checked out. We moved to Colorado. We moved to the mountains, and we moved there. When I was speech writing, I had moved to. I had just met my husband, so I just known him a few months. We met online, and a few weeks after we met, I moved. Like a couple months, I moved like 5 hours away to take this job. And then the first weekend I saw him, I got pregnant. But I stayed in the job. And so I was like pregnant alone near the Capitol building in this little apartment. And finally we moved in together right before I had our daughter. And they transferred me down to the LA office so I could have my partner. And then when she was one, we moved to Colorado for my husband's work, and I continued writing remotely for a while. And then I just wanted to have kids and raise kids, and I homeschooled them because there were just a couple of schools available, and they weren't that great. And there was just like nothing. Like there was not a lot of any kind of like intellectual or literary stimulation going on there at all. So we moved back here, and everything changed. And I took a writing class at the community college, and it changed everything.
I'm glad, because you're a very talented writer, and it's a good feeling when you find, obviously it's not just one thing. You're a mother, you're a wife, you're a friend, I'm sure, but to others. But when you find that that fire, that thing that you feel like you're called to do. For lack of a better term, that's a great feeling. So.
Yeah, I think I was a little dead before. I hate to say that because even with like the richness of having a family life, you know, there's a part of you that, you know, is dead when you're not engaging, you know, some kind of like creative work.
You know, I'd like to cite a really cool literary example here, but the thing that always comes to my mind when I talk to anybody about this is, guys, what's that more or less superhero movie with Bruce Willis? Unbreakable, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Unbreakable.
Okay, so when he, near the end, when he finally kind of accepts who he is, Samuel L. Jackson tells him to just go for a walk, if I remember right. It's been years, and he goes, go for a walk, and you'll feel what you need to do. You know, you'll feel if there's something that you need to do. And I'm paraphrasing this badly because it's been 20 years, but that scene really stuck with me in a sense, because it's like now this character, Bruce Willis's character, now he knows who he is and what he's supposed to do. And I think about that a lot with myself, with other people.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
You got to go back and watch the movie. You missed the entire point of the whole film.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. You did. Well, okay. What's your point of the whole film?
The whole Unbreakable is not a movie about a man figuring out that he's a superhero. Unbreakable is a movie about the first supervillain.
I understand that, but it can be more than one thing.
No.
I'm going to have to side with Pete on this one, Mike. I'm afraid you've been overruled.
I don't think so.
You're going to be put in superhero jail.
I have 5 votes. Anyway, I
want to ask in
yes.
a question or two. So, and I'm curious, who were you reading when you were younger? Were there writers that you read and you thought, oh yeah, I'd like to do that? Or did you draw more inspiration from film or TV for that matter?
You know, I actually was a big Stephen King junkie when I was like 12. I started with Pet Sematary. And then when my daughter was my age, she did the same thing. So it was interesting to watch. Like, she had the same taste at that age. So, yeah. And then I fell away from horror for a long time. I fell away from reading for, you know, many, many years, from reading anything besides the newspaper. I guess that was a big influence. And then my parents had all these books around the house that were super inappropriate for me. Like, I don't even remember what they were, but there was rape, there was mental illness, and
God.
This was, and I was so, and since, you know, like I was really intent on reading because of the language issue. So I would just read everything I could get my hands on. And my parents, they didn't know. I mean, you know, but they didn't have a clue really about anything that went on. So, yeah, I read bad stuff, but I'm really glad I did, because it kind of deranged me a little bit.
Yeah. Did you ever tell your parents, hey guys, you know that stuff that was lying around the house? That was very inappropriate.
Yeah, you fucked me up forever. I hope you're happy.
Did you just allow them not to know that? You were just you know.
Well, were they trashy bestsellers like Harold Robbins and Jacqueline Suzanne? Is that what you alluded to?
No, you know, my dad is a big like crime fiction kind of guy, but it wasn't even that. I don't know. I don't even know where they got these books or why they were reading them, but they were really hard for someone at my age, but I was thirsty for that and for like a really intense reading experience. So it fulfilled that thirst. And, I have to thank them now because it made me realize that, it's good to take risks and push things far.
Yeah. I was going to make a joke about, hey, Dad, don't leave the Playboy on the table, but this sounds so much worse. Yeah. Wow.
The Playboys came much later.
Oh, okay. Well,
I can remember when I was a kid, we would go to my one grandparents' house, and my grandmother kept her copy of Interview with a Vampire hidden in a drawer because it was so racy.
Interview with a Vampire is racy. Okay.
It was.
A lot of that can go over your head. I remember I read James Bond when I was 12, and I would skip through all the sex scenes because I wanted to get to the action.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning you said you write to keep yourself sane, and another question lined up was, so why do you write horror? But I think perhaps you've answered it partially. What is it that about horror and, let's say, weird fiction, like Anya is big into weird fiction, for example. What appeals to you about this?
It was never supposed to be horror. It just happened. Because I'm just dark and weird. So that comes out in the writing.
Emma J. Gibbon has told me a couple times, she's the author of the collection Dark Blood Comes from the Feet, which I highly recommend. But she said one day her husband said to her that, something about her being a horror writer, and she's like, "You think I'm a horror writer?" And he was like, "Well, yeah, of course you're a horror writer." She goes, "I had never thought about it till then, and then I realized I was a horror writer." So, Emma, if you're watching, I'm paraphrasing you badly, but it was something like that. So
yeah, she's a good writer, and
yeah.
there are many literary elements to her writing as well.
Yeah, we had her on the Halloween show, kind of Christmas edition, this past Tuesday, which is on the Lovecraft eZine YouTube channel, for anyone who does not know about it. And she read Porch. I don't know if you've read that one yet, about her cat bringing animals and so forth to her. She's a woman living alone. So it's a great story, and all the stories in that collection are great, but that was a good choice for a read. So
I didn't read that one yet. I read a few of them, and I have the collection, and I recently read the one about the orphanage with the children from the ocean, the kind of
a little bit of a Shadow over
creatures.
Innsmouth flavor to that one,
Yeah, that's a good story.
It is.
It is.
Yeah, she's very talented. As are you. Do you have, of the ones that are published so far, do you have a favorite, or are they just all different in your mind and you can't pick one?
I mean, I'm really trying to go back to a more simple form of writing, like the one in Nervous System.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to ask you again about Nervous System, that the protagonist, the lady who is a server in this restaurant, do you see a continuation of her journey possibly in a future short story? And she just seems so fascinating. And I don't know who it was that said this, but they referenced writing, iceberg writing, where the tip of the iceberg is what you read, but there's so much beneath the surface that's implied. And I felt that with this character.
Yeah, I think, I try to leave all my stories a little bit. I don't like to, tie anything off with a bow. And that one in particular, I think, has some potential to, explore what
Yeah.
could be.
I mean, she's obviously on a journey of some sort, and not that she knows where she's going. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that she knows she's running from something.
Yeah, she could definitely go and cause other trouble in other cities.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, any other questions that we want to ask Ina before we move on?
I mean, I just
Yeah.
wanted to make a comment. I
Please.
think the stories that I read are so interesting because they don't necessarily have like a traditional like horror tropes in that, like, or even necessarily anything supernatural, but it's just the writing style is what makes it the horror. Like, it's kind of almost hard to define. It's so unique because it just really makes you like evoke so many different types of feelings when you read it without relying on familiar tropes that you might see in a lot of horror, which just makes it, like I said, it's just very unique, and I really like it.
Thank you so much. Because I didn't know much about horror and I hadn't considered it enough. I didn't, even when Michael Kelly invited me to submit for Weird Horror issue 1, and he said it has to be supernatural, and I said I'm sorry, I don't think I can do that.
Here's Weird Horror issue 1, by the way, folks, for those who are watching. Great cover.
Yeah, thanks. It is a great cover.
Anyway,
and he said, no, it has to be supernatural. I know you can do it. And I thought, God, I really can't. So the first thing I did, and there's that night script again, because I knew David Surface. I knew that he wrote a column about horror, and I knew that he could point me in the right direction. I was so happy I met him through Night Script. So I contacted him and I said, where can I go to learn how to write a supernatural story? I'm totally lost. And he directed me to his blog. And there was a great, actually in the comment section, there was a great comment thread about how to make your supernatural beasts or characters like unexpected and exciting, like, surprising. And that gave me everything I needed to know. So I'm just like feeling my way in the dark. But
I've got a bit of a question. And okay, so you've released several stories. What are you working on right now? Do you have something else in mind that you're doing?
yes. I'm working on something that's driving me crazy. It's called Reverb, and it has a supernatural element to it. Now that I know a little bit more about writing that kind of story, and I'm taking it involves research because it's about sound and time. But I'm taking inspiration from Helen Oyeyemi. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. Her story Presence in her collection. What is not yours is not yours. And the story is called Presence. And she does this. It's really instructive because it introduces the supernatural elements like in increments and gives you little hints of them in a way that's really instructive to me. So I keep going back to that story right now.
Is it a short story or a novel?
Hers.
Yeah.
Hers.
Yeah.
Hers is a collection.
A collection.
And Presence is a story in the collection.
What's the name of the collection? Because I want to get
it's called What is Not Yours is Not Yours.
What is not Okay, I see it. Thank you very much for the recommendation. I will check that out. The reverb. Well, first, let me say a couple things. I really liked what you just said about introducing the supernatural elements very slowly. John Connolly does that very well with his detective series, the Charlie Parker detective series. You know, you start off and you're reading crime novels, and then suddenly you realize that very, very, very incrementally, as you go through the series, the supernatural starts to come more and more to the forefront. So I'm a very big fan of that because it really grounds it too, so that when the supernatural does come out, it's creepier, it's scarier. So there's that. And I wanted to ask you, as much as you want to talk about something you're still working on, is Reverb, is it a time travel story of some sort?
No, it's
No.
not
Okay.
time travel. It's like sound travel. If not exactly, but it's like I'm trying to figure out a good intersection of sound and time that works in the story.
I'll understand it when I read it someday.
Is
Hopefully soon.
Reverb a novel or a short story?
It's a story for now.
Well, it just depends on how technical you want to get, because sound is transmitted energy through matter. It's moving in waves, okay? And energy is related to the speed of light. So that'll give you a connection into time. So
I'm not trying to make her make it a time travel story. I just like time travel. And
I just want to know if Matt is Matt drunk again?
I think so.
Am I ever not?
It seems like it. Yeah.
I think he is. Yeah. All right. I will check that out. What is not yours is not yours by Helen Oyemi, and I don't know if I'm saying it right either, but it's Oyeyemi. For those of you out there who are interested in, and I believe, oh my gosh, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but I get so many people who email me and message me, can you promote this, can you promote that, and there's some diamonds in the rough. There's some good ones out there. The folks, Hippocampus, I'm sorry, Trepido Publishing, if I'm saying that right, they sent me an email a few months back about a book called A Season of Loathsome Miracles by Max D. Stanton, who we had on the show a couple of weeks ago. And I'm like, oh, yeah, sure, send me the book. Never heard of the guy. I read it, and it's like, oh my God, this stuff is incredible. So my point is just to illustrate the perspective of all I see, and I know that all of you guys see, John, Pete, Melissa, all of you. When I read your work, it really is a cut above of a lot of the stuff that I see. I would say most of the stuff that I see. It's really, really, I think the best compliment you can give, besides a story and a writer, possibly, besides the fact that it's good, that it's great, is also that it's unique. I mean, because you can have a great werewolf story, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's unique. It might just be really fun escapism, or vampire or whatever, but not unique. Good, but not unique. But your stories are great and they're unique, and I really want more people to know about you sincerely, and that's where this comes from.
So actually, that leads to my next question, which
Yes.
is like, conventions have basically been sidelined by the epidemic, and a lot of author tours have unfortunately been sidelined as well. But are you going to be giving any more readings of your work, like in online meetings or things like that we might be able to get out the word?
If somebody invites me, I'm always game.
Anytime you want to read something of yours, I will release it at Lovecraft eZine. Trust me. So
Because
the ball is in your court.
well, see, the thing is, we do other podcasts that
What?
not necessarily in this format, but where we have authors read stories, and it's really pretty amazing, great listens. So,
Are you talking about the Quiet Horror Stories thing?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but you also have other people read for you,
Pseudopod.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love reading stories because then I don't have to talk.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
All right.
You really should. You know what? I can't say enough good things about Pseudopod. Yeah, you should contact them if you haven't already. They're good. They're good people. They're always looking for good stories. And for those who don't know, again, if you go to the Lovecraft eZine YouTube channel, the first row you'll see is the Lovecraft eZine podcast playlist. But then if you go below that, we've got a few months back a fairly new videos called Quiet Horror. And then it was 6 or 7 weeks ago that Ina was on with Jeffrey Thomas and Scott Thomas and I, and did a reading very well. So you can listen to that if you're looking for Ina reading one of her stories. Which one did you read again? I forget.
I read Nervous System.
Nervous System, right. So if you don't want to read Nervous System, if you want to listen to Nervous System, go to the Lovecraft eZine podcast on YouTube, scroll down, and look for where she's our guest reader, and you will get to hear this story. So, and you will also get to meet the giant, scary glow doll that scared Ina out of her mind, that her husband and her daughter, the prank that her husband and her daughter pulled on her, right?
Yes.
This is the first time in front of the mass audience you've told this story. So before I let you go, you have to tell the story.
So it was around Halloween.
And I want you to tell your husband that he has inspired me. And I'll tell you a few of the things I've done since then.
So I don't want to tell him he's inspired anyone.
Anyway, go on. That's great.
So, yes, so it was, I made a last ditch effort with my family, with my parents, and I called them to try and get them to stop watching Fox News or whatever they were watching. And we live like in a loft-like space, so there's no privacy of sound. And so everything everyone says, everyone can hear. The only like room door with a door is the bathroom.
They don't live with you. You were on the phone, right?
I was on the phone with my parents. Yes. Right. So, but my family, my husband and the kids, we have 3 kids. All they heard was me on the phone with my dad. There's a little bit of a language barrier. And I'm yelling because I'm stressed and there's a language barrier. And all they hear me is yelling over and over again, Dad, there's no such thing. There's no group Antifa. There's no organized group Antifa in the United States. This is fake. And so I get off the phone. I'm really stressed. And I can't. I've had it with my parents. And
you know what helps with stress? Adrenaline.
What?
Adrenaline.
Your
husband was only thinking of you when he did what you're about to.
So we went out. It was somebody's birthday. I think it was my daughter's. Yeah, it was October. So we went out for an outdoor mall takeout, sitting in an outdoor mall.
Right.
We had 2 cars. I came home. The loft is pitch black. And I went into the bathroom. I come out It's pitch black, and I go to my bed, and there's this giant, like, lit up blue mannequin. And
it's like 5 feet tall, right?
yeah, it's tall. It's like a person, but right by my bed, and starts maniacally laughing, like really spooky. And I am so I gasp, and then all of a sudden I hear these giggles from like crouching. My husband and my daughter are on the couch, just erupted into giggles. And they
Wives
said,
everywhere listening to this are like, God damn it, I hope my husband doesn't do this.
and they said, this is your present. Her name's Antifa.
Nice.
So now we have her. She's by the front door as the greeter.
Well, you sent me a picture of her. If anybody wants a picture of her, I'll post it later. But you know, not that I needed to be inspired to scare Danielle, but Logan and I try to do that on a semi-regular basis by forcing her to watch scary movies with us and everything. She usually keeps her game face on, but she actually got up and shut off the first Jeeper Creepers and said, no fucking way are we finishing this. So anyway, bye Matt, thank you. So I don't know, I was inspired. Your husband is an inspiring person, and I hope you tell him. I just so happened by chance to have the ghost face mask from
You're going to be sleeping in the backyard for a week, dude.
You're going to be sleeping under the backyard.
This was 2 months ago.
This is not going to go well.
This was 2 months ago. It's already done.
Yeah, the mask from Scream.
Yes, the mask from Scream, Rick. So we've got a coat rack at the end of the hallway. So I put like a coat around it, you know, and then I put the Scream mask at the very top. And yeah, she enjoyed it. Yeah, it went well. So.
Like 5 times. Don't try to beat me. Okay.
I just want to know, what's the line of succession for when Mike's wife kills him? Which one of us takes over the running of the Lovecraft? How does that go? Is it Rick and then Pete and then Matt? I mean, how does that, you know?
Matt takes over.
Probably Matt.
Yeah, what's the line of succession, you know? Because I just want to make sure that we have that contingency plan in place, because quite clearly he has a death wish.
It's very thoughtful of you, but I believe Melissa is next in line. So.
Oh no! Oh whoa! That's way too much responsibility.
Okay, we'll give it to Bridget. She's not even.
Yeah, she's not even here
like
to defend herself. Wow.
Yeah.
And you still blame the movie on her too.
Mike, how do you know that your wife enjoyed it?
Because I heard her scream
How do you know
in the middle of the night.
What?
I heard enjoyed in air quotes. She did not enjoy it. I heard her scream in the middle of the night when she saw it. So anyway, folks, sincerely, all jokes and kidding aside, if you weren't aware of EFFRESS before today, I'm glad that you are now. Please check out the so far, as of late December 2020, list of published EFFRESS stories. If you're listening, you can get the spelling of her name and all that on the show notes too. But its first name is Ina, I-N-N-A, and the last name is EFFRESS. So track down those publications and go from there. I mean, Nervous System is in Strange Tales Tartarus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then
here, this is the Tartarus Press, and it's available on Kindle now. Is the hardcover sold out?
Strange Tales, 30, Tartarus at 30.
Mm-hmm.
Just to throw in a couple more: Liquid Airs and Night Script 3, and in Best Horror of the Year 10. Which Best Horror of the Year 10, that had to feel good.
Well, that was like, it was that it reminded me of Emma's story because I thought, I'm a horror writer.
Yeah.
And I guess that's when I realized.
That's funny. I mentioned John Connolly before. He won some kind of award last year for a horror writing award. And he's like, I write horror? I thought I wrote crime. So anyway, yes, please do check out our work. I want to talk about a few more things since this is the last show of the year. And, do you want to stick around or do you need to go?
I am going to go take care of my youngest who's with me here.
Okay.
And make sure he's still alive.
Good idea.
And I just want to say thank you so much to you, Mike, and to all of you and to everyone watching and listening. This is, I'm not used to this attention, so I really appreciate it. And thank you for the great questions.
Well, you're welcome, but I do think you're going to start to get more and more attention. And again, if you folks would like to listen to Ina read Nervous System, it's on the Lovecraft eZine YouTube. So thanks, Ina. And
thank you.
You enjoy the rest of your night, okay?
You too.
Thanks for being here. And I'll
Bye,
email
everyone.
you when the audio version is up.
Happy New Year.
You too. Happy New Year. What else do I have? Okay, I guess I've already.
John, you know who she reminds me of?
Who?
Ina? No, who?
T.E.D. Klein.
Really?
Really?
Writing-wise.
Slow, deliberate, dense, bordering on the literary.
Dense in a good way.
Sure, yeah.
And Straub, but T.E.D. Klein more so.
Yeah, I was, her story Liquid Air. I have pored over that thing. I'm fascinated by the way it works. That there's this kind of acceleration of weirdness in it that I find really interesting. So that it without wanting to give away too much for a reader who might want to search it out and read it, it parallels two relationships. There's a relationship that a woman has with her husband, who is obviously very mentally ill, and he has filled their house or part of their house with dolls. Speaking of dolls, sort of which are about the size of an 8-year-old child, I think it is, and they're all supposed to be girls, but they have the anatomy of women. So it's all very, and he's just not in a good way. And at the same time, she is, for her job, she's dealing with this guy who works with neon, with neon signs. And so there's this kind of all sorts of tensions that are going on, and all sorts of creative acts that are going on. And then the story ends in this I want to say this apocalyptic kind of vision that is just I know it's not a supernatural horror story, but it might be like a visionary horror story, and I may be like I'm parsing things, but I kind of feel that way, that there's something that story really goes beyond.
It's really
excited.
It does.
Yeah.
It is like that can happen and not be like super, because I was like, it is just the atmosphere is like so kind of like claustrophobic, and then the way they relate the different types of gases and things with the neon and the body. Like I was like, wow, it's very like encompassing. It's interesting, and I think it's
it's almost like it's almost like that story is almost like the Hannibal TV show, and that it's like just Baroque imagery that it just pushes so far, and you get this final climactic image that is just it's like so over the top. That it has this kind of like transcendental effect or something like that.
And that last scene is done very well, because it reminded me of a scene that was a similar scene from a spy movie. I'm not going to say which one.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those stories. Excuse me. Do you have something, Pete?
No, go ahead, finish up.
I was just going to say it's one of those stories of hers. I actually had that story foremost in my mind. Not that it's far from the only one of Ina's, but that just really cries out to be cries out to be read more than once. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Because
you definitely need to.
There's plenty to miss.
I had to go back and reread the whole first section because I was like, wait a minute, and go back and reread it.
I was going to say, when I was referring to the conclusion scene as being like from a spy movie did it horribly, even though it was a famous spy movie. She did it superb.
I'll remind the listeners that we're talking about Liquid Air and by EFFRESS, and that is in Night Script 3, and it's also in Best Horror of the Year 10. So, Felon Detlow liked it,
Yeah, and the funny thing about her writing, it reminds me as well of some of Mary Rickards' work. There's that same kind of density of language that I really associate with Rickards' work, and it's its own thing. It is definitely not cookie cutter horror.
No. And, with the Klein stuff, it's sort of like, something is going on. The protagonist doesn't. Or is clueless or oblivious, possibly purposely so. And yet, because you have a sort of reader's knowledge, you're prepared. You know that something's going to happen, and you're drawing connections that are being ignored.
Yeah,
I get that feeling.
Yeah,
Michael Sisko's most recent, I think it's his most recent novella about the cyclist. What was that, John?
Maybe dance with, or do you mind if we dance with your legs?
Yeah. Do you mind if we dance with your legs? I made a joke online and I wrote, and this is exactly the way I feel about Ina's writing. Is it's that Homer Simpson video where he's sitting in the dark watching Twin Peaks, and he watches 30 seconds of it, and Homer's like, brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
What's going on? Right.
Right.
And not that I don't, but it's just there are so many layers to her work, and I think that's a good thing. I really think we need that, and I just hope that our goal for today, I want more people to know about her and seek out her work. So
hopefully she'll put out a collection, because I think it's right now it's a little hard to get because it's here in one anthology or in another.
But sure, but you do get those other stories too. Like when you pick up her story for Weird Horror, you get the rest of the stories that Michael Kelly selected for Weird Horror.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
But for Carter's Press, I mean, if you didn't buy the book on the day it came out,
you're poor.
Good luck. Yeah.
But you're right. But I have no doubt, Melissa, she'll reach the point where it's a collection. People can pick up her work and read it in a collection.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing you could absolutely see Michael Kelly doing with Undertow. It would fit. I feel like her stuff would fit right in with what he's doing. Hint, Michael Kelly. Hint.
That's right. Well, he knows her. He knows how good she is.
True enough.
All right. I want to bring attention to another talented writer real quick because we have several things to cover on our last show of the year. There is a book, just to remind you all, and it's called A Chronology of Shadows by a gentleman by the name of Rick Lay. And it's available in print and Kindle, and it's only $4.99 on Kindle, which is, to me, cheap as hell for all the meticulous research that went into this. And Rick, can you spend a minute telling us what A Chronology of Shadows is about?
Well, it's a chronology of the shadow novels from the 1930s, but the main things in it that people like are the intro, which talks about his early life before he became white, and then there is a speculated chapter on his origins and his family. I know Paul Wilson loved.
Good. So anyway, if you're not aware of it, Chronology of Shadows by Rick Lai, L-A-I, and
This is the old edition, right, Rick?
Yeah.
You got a new one out, right?
I mean, that's probably what the current edition looks like.
the Kindle cover looks exactly like that.
Okay.
Yeah. While I'm talking to Rick, I have a theory about the two most powerful. Yeah, comes straight from the movies. Okay, I'm not talking about the comics. The two most powerful beings in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm going to go with Scarlet Witch and obviously Captain Marvel. Agree?
Yeah,
Disagree?
I agree.
You agree?
Yeah, well, if we throw in the Living Tribunal and Galactus, we may have people more powerful. But
yeah. Well,
you get people who approach God at some point in the Marvel universe. You know,
that point where and if you haven't seen it by now, I'm sorry, but it's been what, a year and a half. That point where Captain America gets the hammer and Thor says, "I knew it." You know, was just so great. So I loved it so much. But also the other moment that I love so much, and there were many, where Scarlet Witch lands in front of Thanos and she goes, "You took everything from me," and she's just pissed as hell. And he's like, "I don't even know who you are." And she's like, "You will." And she just starts taking him apart. And the only thing that saves him is he tells the ships to rain fire down on the
which
on
is
everybody
neutralized then by Captain Marvel.
Right, exactly. So
it's certainly probably the two most powerful women in the Marvel universe.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the MCU, I was like, who could be more powerful than these two? Possibly, I'm sorry, Scarlet Witch's boyfriend. I forget his name. Vision, yes. Possibly Vision, maybe.
Well, you see, the other reason I'm making people more powerful than them is that there are beings who approximate God, like eternity and infinity, and
yeah.
No, you're not wrong, but I'm just talking about the characters.
No, I'm saying of the non-cosmic godlike beings, they're certainly the two most powerful.
Yeah.
Well, certainly the two most powerful humans.
Yeah.
Humanoids.
Well, I wanted to run that by you because and now, on a more somber note, Wonder Woman 84. Kelly said it sucked.
I liked it.
I've heard nothing but bad. Well, now I've heard something good. Rick likes it, but I have friends that have watched it and were not impressed. But I haven't seen it.
No, I haven't seen it either. I've heard the same thing. I've heard a lot of my friends complaining about it. But I've heard one or two people who were like, actually, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe. You know, I have a certain sort of like, I don't know what, contrary spirit that says, well, it can't be that bad. Granted, this contrary spirit has gotten me in trouble a few times. But,
you know, sometimes you can go in with high expectations, and because they were so high, you think it's a worse movie than it is, perhaps.
That's very true.
And I don't know if that's the case here, but I'm just throwing that out there.
I think they put themselves into a very bad position with this film.
Why?
Because they did another world-ending event. And they bought back Steve Trevor. And I'm not going to talk about how they brought that. Okay, so there are 3 points of conflict there right off the bat that you know how they're going to end. Because you know the world's not going to end. You know that Steve Trevor's not around in Justice League. And you know that Wonder Woman's going to live.
And you've got too many villains.
So, you know...
I don't think... I think the problem was the villains, if there was a problem, was that it didn't make sense that Dr. Minerva chose to become a cheetah in that movie.
Yeah.
If the villainess had been Giganta, it would have made more sense for it to turn into somebody who was so super strong and big.
Right.
If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm saying.
Also, to use Maxwell Lord was fine. Okay, it's good. It's fine. You know, he's a good anti-hero / villain, whatever. I think that if you were trying to tie this all together into a DC entertainment universe, you could have pulled off the same thing with Glorious Godfrey. And then you would have tied it into Apocalypse.
It's true.
You mean the newscaster?
Well, no.
The guy from Apocalypse.
Oh, there's a guy from Apocalypse.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway.
Moving on. Again, since this is the last show of 2020, I read a lot of good books. Great books that were not published in 2020. I'm just going to mention 3 or 4 that I read that I thought were great that were published in 2020. And here they are. Dark Blood Comes from the Feet by Emma J. Gibbon. Cosmos Possible Worlds by Anne Druin. That's Carl Sagan's widow. That's nonfiction, of course. The Shadows by Alex North. I can't say enough good things about. It's a very, very good book. A Season of Loathsome Miracles by Max D. Stanton. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Children of the Fang by John Langan. And again, that's just to name a few. And I wanted to ask you guys quickly for the same thing. Books?
I'll go.
Sure.
I'll just say I also had A Season of Loathsome Miracles on my list.
Okay.
I'm in the middle of reading Only Good Indians, and I really like it, so I'll put it in there, even though I'm not finished. I mean, we'll go there.
Oh yeah, you're safe. You're safe there. Yeah.
I'm not. I think I'll make it by the end of the year. I have a few 2020 book releases that I'm not going to make it. They're still on my list. I can't add them to this list. But
Right.
Anyway, Charles Stross, Dead Lies Dreaming. Technically kind of a Laundry Files novel, but not. I really like that. Signals by F. Paul Wilson is like a prequel to the Adversary Cycle. I really liked. And this one's way off base because I don't even think you would consider Susanna Clarke a horror writer, but Piranesi was an amazing work of dark fantasy and weird fiction. And I feel like it's best to go into that book with having no expectations because it starts out with a very small focus and you have to slowly figure out what's going on, but it's really amazing. Like,
well,
really
I realize
good
this is more or less a horror
fiction.
show, but it doesn't have to be horror, Melissa. I mean, I mentioned Cosmos Possible Worlds, which is a science book, you know.
You could consider that's the kind of genre. It's really good. Like it was surprising. So that's
Thank you. I will. The ones that I have not read, I will check out. Who wants to go next? If anyone.
I made a list, but
But you're on all of them, right?
I am right. It's just me, also me.
Children of the Fang, done.
It's no. I mean, there were there were a lot of really great books published this past year. I do think Stephen Graham Jones's The Only Good Indians was probably my favorite, and I think in a lot of ways, like it's kind of the horror novel of the year for a lot of different reasons. Mm-hmm. But I also thought Paul Tremblay's Survivor Song, which was so, like it was so accurate. And in the beginning, it's a plague novel, and the beginning of it felt so accurate to what was happening at the beginning of COVID that it was actually kind of difficult to read in a way.
Yeah, if you'll allow me, John, let me just jump in very quickly and say that I've almost started reading Survivor Song several times since it was published, and I just couldn't do it. I'm going to give myself a year or two. I have no doubt whatsoever that if I had read Survivor Song this year, that I would have included in my list, because Paul's a very talented writer. I mean, I've read Disappearance at Devil's Rock twice. I love that book. So I don't disagree with what you're saying. I just didn't have the stomach for it this year.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. What else? Sylvia Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to read that.
I
can't wait to read that. It's on my list.
It's such a bonkers book. This is one of the things I love about that book is that you know, you the title, "Oh, Mexican Gothic," right? And some of the pre-release publicity has been saying, "Oh, well, it's kind of like Rebecca, blah blah blah," and it just is gonzo. It just goes in these like at a certain point you think, is she really going to go for it? And oh man, does she go for it? It's just lunatic, in the best possible way. Andy Davidson's The Boatman's Daughter was he's a terrific stylist, man. It was a terrific follow up to his first novel, In the Valley of the Sun. Very different, but also kind of both. He's interested in the intersection in some ways of noir and horror. Only this is set in a kind of a swamp setting, and he does amazing things. Rachel Harrison's The Return, which actually I was kind of disappointed that book didn't get a lot more play, because I thought I found it really gripping and kind of frightening. It's a book about a bunch of friends, college friends, and one of them goes missing, and they think that she's dead, and they try to sort of I don't know, acknowledge their loss, and then she reappears, and they decide that they're going to have a kind of get together at this little boutique hotel in the Catskills, and she has not come back the same. Let's put it that way. It's really wonderful and nightmarish.
Okay.
Molly Polig wrote a book called The Unsuitable, which is like this sort of like really kind of witty and weird, almost stream of consciousness novel, or certainly interior monologue, from the point of view of this young woman who is just utterly unsuitable to be married. In the late 19th century, and a sort of upper class milieu, and her dead mother's voice speaks in her head, and it's just so different. It really does its own thing. Laird Barron's Worse Angels, the third Isaiah Coleridge novel, I thought was the best one yet, and you don't have to have read the other novels, the previous two, to enjoy this, although I think you'll get more out of it. But I think you could read all three in probably a long weekend. It's really entertaining stuff. In terms of collections, Emma Gibbon's Dark Blood Comes from the Feet. I mean, that's got to be one of the big ones this year. And also Dan Brown, Underworld Dreams, another. And it's funny because we had, last week Clint Smith, Skeleton Melodies, a couple of weeks ago Richard Gavin, Grotesqueries. But man, we've just, I don't know, we've been batting 1,000 in terms of like having on all of the authors of these really good collections. In terms of nonfiction, I didn't read a lot, but I liked Brian Keene's autobiographical, The End of the Road, which was sort of billed as, it's Keene finally writes his Danse Macabre. It's not Keene's Danse Macabre. It's a novel about, a memoir about coming to terms with death, with the death of a very good friend, and it's very moving.
Can I back you up just real quickly before you go on to Laird's third Coleridge novel? He made a joke online a few months ago, and he wrote, I'm not saying it's Lovecraftian, but it's Lovecraftian, where this is a crime novel series. Bo Johnson, a writer, has been made a couple videos lately and put them on Twitter. And he quoted something out of book 2, I believe it is, if memory serves, that I think is one of the best paragraphs I've ever read in 50 years of life. This is from Laird Barron's Coleridge number 2 novel, I believe. One lonesome winter, many years ago, I went hunting in the mountains with Gene Kavanaugh, a grandmaster, human, how do you say that? Emeritus?
Emeritus, yeah.
Sinister
Hitman Emeritus, yeah.
Sinister constellations blazed above our camp on the edge of a plateau scaled with ice. The stars are always cold and jagged as smashed glass in the winter in Alaska. Thin air seared my lungs if I inhaled too deeply. Nearby, a herd of caribou rested under the mist of its collected breath. We weren't there for them. Sinister Constellations. I mean, this is just fucking great writing, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, no, Laird is still, he's still doing it. You
Yeah.
know, and it's interesting, right, to have had Inna on this show, right? You know, that there are, I think I think it's probably always been there, but I certainly feel that you notice a lot more these days that there are, it feels like there are a lot more writers who are doing these kinds of like interesting things with language. And yeah, so like Inna's work is a lot of that language is really dense and there are really interesting metaphors in it. And the same thing with Laird.
And you read his paragraph and you're like, I understand it, and it's so beautiful. I need to read it again 5 more times.
Yeah. Well, no.
Well, yes. Anyway.
And, you know, the funny thing is I thought I kind of felt in a way like I should give a shout out to Shudder, the streaming service, because man, I've watched a lot of stuff on them, you know, and they really, I feel like they've gotten me through.
And I mean, the content you get for $5.99 a month or whatever it is.
And you know, obviously we had the people from Host on the hour-long movie, which I think really holds up. But also the movie Scare Me.
And was a risk on our part to have the people from Host on the show.
On a Zoom call, yeah. I mean, let's face it.
I was proud of you, John. You were so courageous. Yeah.
Who knew how that was going to turn out? Wouldn't it be great if like a little head appeared over my shoulder or something? You know?
I'm going to have the lady, you know, the lady who was the, I don't know, started the whole thing and then had to disappear. Sylvan Baxter, I think her name is. Anyway,
the Scottish lady,
yes,
she's like a medium or something like that.
Yes, the medium. Thank you. That's the word.
Oh my God! Why is this? Why would you do this? You know how this is going to end. You know,
but you know what
say
else?
Something flippant, and
you know
then
what
we're
else
all
she
dead.
played? And if Rick was in the room, he'd already have this. She played the elder or whatever she was on Doctor Who that finds the timeless child. So,
yeah.
So yeah, she's really nice. She's good. She said she would only be on the show if I did not cut my hair, and I said, I'm sorry, my wife wants me to cut my hair, so I have to, and she still agreed to come on the show. So.
Oh man.
So anyway, you were going on with your nonfictions, John.
Just movie wise, I was saying Scare Me.
Oh yeah.
I really loved Scare Me. I thought that was just terrifically done, and I think what I loved about it, as with Host actually, was that these were movies of a modest budget, and part of I think what makes a movie like Scare Me, what's interesting to me is that it takes a chance, right? Mm-hmm. Because these characters get together and one says to the other, "Tell me a scary story." And normally in films like that, there would be a cut to the dramatization of the scary story. But instead here, it's just the actors. It's just them telling one another scary stories. And yeah, they get some help from camera angles and soundtrack and that sort of stuff. But as an exercise in acting, I thought it was really good. It was really
good. There was only one disappointing spot to me that I can't speak of without spoiling the movie. And
I feel like in this regard, like sort of like long, you know, kind of monologues, I should probably mention, what's the one that you were telling everybody to watch about the small Texas town with the UFOs?
I was.
Yeah. And
the episode like the Twilight Zone.
It was sort of like the Twilight Zone, right? And
the
I'm sorry, filmmakers.
The guys in the kids in the high school.
Yeah, at the beginning there's a high school.
The Vast of Night.
The Vast of Night. That was another one.
That was incredible.
You had, like think about the way that movie uses again, just speaking.
And the camera work.
Yeah, those were three.
But yeah, when he's on the phone with the gentleman, you're scared to death listening to them just having a conversation.
Yeah.
The other thing that film did so brilliantly, John, so brilliantly, I've never seen it, is when they walk into the old lady's house and she's reading something. And before the two protagonists say a word, I'm thinking to myself, I can't understand a word she's saying, but this is creepy as hell.
Yeah.
And then you find out what language she's speaking, and you find out why you were so creeped out. And I'm thinking, how long and how much research, how many different attempts did they have to make to come up with this? Because it really succeeded on its own without the protagonist saying, "Oh, that's creepy." No, I was already creeped out.
I do feel too, I should mention on Shudder, maybe less serious, but no less worth your time, the New Zealand horror classic Deathgasm, or as they pronounce it, Deathgasm, about a metal band that's trying to summon the devil.
How did I not see that?
It is awesome. It is so awesome. It is made with amazing verve. There's also an Australian movie, I think it is, called The Boar, about a giant feral hawk running around killing people. And it's like Jaws, except with a boar in the Australian outback. Also recommended.
Anyone else?
I'd like to recommend some audio dramas.
Please do.
Well, the Lovecraft Historical Society hit home runs with The Whisper in the Darkness, which is very difficult to dramatize, and they came up with a clever way to do it. And Curse of Yig, they really expanded on that without being unfaithful to Lovecraft's original revision.
Okay.
Anything else, Rick?
No.
Last but not least?
Oh, me?
I think so.
So I'm going to go with Rick on some audio dramatizations. The Left-Right Game.
That was amazing. Yeah.
And Carrier, also by Q Code.
That was really good too.
Carrier I was like, why am I listening to this? Because it's not it didn't seem as good as the Left-Right Game. And then I couldn't stop listening to it. And I get to the end and I'm like, oh my God. It's really, really good. So they pulled that off. Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to thank Shudder for Kevin Isn't Real.
Oh, thank you for mentioning that.
Did that come out this
movie.
year? Really?
I watched it this year. I don't know.
I don't know, but Kevin Isn't Real is fantastic.
Yeah.
It is absolutely fantastic. And the book is good, and I love books, obviously, but the movie is better.
The movie is great.
Wait, that just reminds me, Pete, what about Dave Made a Maze? I completely spaced
Dave
that
Made a
one.
Maze.
Amazing.
Although the person I was rooting for to get killed did not get killed, so that's all I'll say.
Oh, but it's still a possibility.
Yeah, oh yeah, we can have Dave made. You know how Alien and Aliens?
Yeah.
Instead of Dave Made a Maze 2, it could be Dave Made Mazes.
Well, no, remember, there's something that came out.
Oh, I remember.
That's right.
I remember.
Something got out of the maze.
Yes, thank you for mentioning those two.
Going along with Daniel Isn't Real as Z.
Another great movie.
I think those two movies pair really well together.
They do. And I'm looking at, before you continue, I'm looking at the best horror movies of the year on Bloody Disgusting, which Megan Navarro does have some good points, but she doesn't have those on there. And they deserve to be. They didn't come out this year?
They may not have.
Oh, good point. All right, never mind. Sorry, Megan.
Yeah. So, but we just got to see them,
Those are some amazing. Daniel Isn't Real. I could watch Z again tonight. I mean, it's so. All right, are you done or
no?
Oh,
things I read this year that I've really enjoyed.
Okay, are you done?
Christy Demeester's Beneath.
Are you done?
No.
Just giving you a hard time. Okay, Christy Demeester's Beneath. Okay, go on.
I was really surprised, but Steven Seville and Steve Lockley did a really good job of emulating Ramsey Campbell with the sign of Glocky.
Sign of Glocky.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's been out for a while, right?
It has been out for a while. I just got around.
That's the book with Dennis Wheatley as a character, right?
Yeah. I didn't know about this book until I'm a big fan of an artist by the name of a comic book writer and artist by the name of Mark A. Nelson. He did a lot of groundbreaking work for Dark Horse on Aliens. He did a one-shot anthropomorphic noir called Silverwing. I'm a real big fan of his work. I did not know that he was a Lovecraftian, and he published an art book called Innsmouth, The Lost Drawings of Manish Sokovia.
And his name again is?
It is basically
Wow.
He did great artwork of what he sees in Innsmouth.
What was the
Mark A. Nelson.
artist's name? Mark A. Nelson.
And the name of the artist's book is Innsmouth.
Innsmouth, The Lost Drawings of Manish Sokovia.
All right.
A comic book that I really enjoyed this year came out a couple years ago, but I finally got around to reading it. Weird Detective, which is a noir featuring a Yith detective.
Oh, you gave away the twist.
No, that's pretty obvious from the beginning.
What's the other one? Oh,
it took me a while to realize it.
Fatale. Fatale came out a few years ago, but Fatale was much better. Pete.
Okay, I haven't gotten to Fatale yet.
What?
You should see the frigging. I will. Okay, so
Rick,
I was.
Do you hear this blasphemy? He's not gotten to Fatale yet.
I was
Oh
organizing my to be read pile. There are 3 copies of the same book in the to be read pile because I bought a copy, somebody sent me a copy, and then somebody else sent me a copy.
In case you want to read it more than once, 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. So yes.
All right. Well, now everyone, you need to read Fatale. So.
All right, Fatale.
All right. Here's Megan's list on Bloody Disgusting. Hunter x Hunter. Never heard of it. I value her opinion, though.
Hunter x Hunter?
No, it's Hunter x Hunter.
Okay.
Hunter,
yes. Okay,
there's 15 of these. That was number 15. Number 14 is Scare Me. I think we obviously all agree it deserves to be on the list. She did, like, Hunter x Hunter does her synopsis, so it does not appeal to me. But then there's ones like Breaking Surface, which I have not seen. 2 Sisters on a Diving Excursion. Sounds familiar, right? One of them becomes trapped on the ocean floor. I don't know. I'll have to see it. Number 12, Anything for Jackson.
All right, so I watched that. That's not bad.
I almost watched it and I thought this doesn't seem good to me.
I just didn't like I was like, that doesn't sound like something I want to watch.
Yeah.
The premise.
It's very painful to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it seems
sad. if you have, well, we've said this a million times, right? It's like the movie The Mist. If you're a parent, you watch it once, you never watch it again.
Yeah.
Right.
No matter how good it is. All right, number 11, Spontaneous. The romance between seniors Mara and Dylan has barely begun when students in their high school inexplicably, is there any other way, start to explode. Literally
right there, that may be enough to hook me.
Okay, I would watch that.
Literally explode like human water balloons without rhyme or reason or any answers by authorities. This afflicted class has no other choice but to live each day as though it's their last. Maybe they're on a hellmouth. I don't know. Anyway, I might check it out. Underwater. I didn't think it was a great film, but it's a Lovecraftian film. I like that it's on the list.
You don't have to think about it. You can just watch it, be on the edge of your seat.
Very
it's
true.
A little bit derivative of Alien, but there's tentacles at the end.
I mean, you're on the edge of your seat from 2 minutes in.
Yeah, like
yeah,
it's just
yeah.
a good action. It's like popcorn movie. You don't have to think about it. You can just watch it.
There are
Take your
no
mind off
slow
the world.
moments. There are no slow
No.
moments in that movie.
Not
All
at
right,
all.
so this looks interesting. Number 9, The Witch, Part 1, The Subversion. As a child, Jae Yoon escaped from a facility and passed out at the edge of a farm. Years later, she's been adopted by the family and has no memory of life before them. When dangerous people from her past threaten everything that she holds dear, she'll have to uncover the truth. First and foremost, the one thing to know going into this is that it was written and directed by Hoong Jung Park, the screenwriter behind the excellent and disturbing I Saw the Devil. So there you go.
I didn't like I Saw the Devil. But okay.
What?
Oh my God!
Why are you the way you are? What is wrong with you?
Sangria. Too
Sangria.
much.
All right, the next movie, I'm not even going to read this. Number 8 is called Swallow, and it's a housewife who finds herself increasingly compelled to consume dangerous objects. That just does not appeal to me at all. I'm sorry.
That's like a real disorder.
Yeah.
Eh.
Number 7 is His House. I tried to watch it. I don't know. I didn't. Number 6 is Get Duped.
Get Duped is not a horror film.
It doesn't look like a horror film. Number 5, I've not seen, but I'm told is good. Come to Daddy, with our favorite Frodo playing not Frodo. So,
Okay.
but I actually have heard it's really, really good. And then I got a 100,000% agree with this, The Invisible Man.
That was good. I enjoyed it.
Well, it was good. Elizabeth Moss elevated it to great.
Yeah, it was a good film. I really enjoyed it.
Number 3 I've not seen. Kelly Young says it's freaking awesome, and that's Possessor by Cronenberg's kid.
Okay.
And this is on, I believe, Amazon and other streaming services to
I
rent.
think it's still pay-per-view.
I don't know. It's insanely gory and violent. I'm sure it's good, but I don't like gory and violent. I mean, I don't like gory. Number 2, I have to 1,000% agree with The Dark and the Wicked.
Haven't seen it yet.
Me neither.
Yeah, me neither.
I recommended this to all of you.
Yes.
You've
exactly
all got
why.
me. You
Yeah,
all
we were
really
just-
do have me blocked on emails, don't you?
No, I did read a book you recommended. I didn't watch a movie you recommended.
I keep waiting for. I'm waiting for it to become free on one of my streaming
What-
services.
Yeah.
I
What
don't want
book
to pay the
did you-
$2.99.
What book did you read that I
The
recommended?
Croning by Laird Barron. I
Oh,
felt
yes.
like that was amazing. I couldn't put it down.
Yeah,
It's like, wow, I can't believe I didn't read that yet. But
Yeah.
now I have.
yeah, he's all right, I guess. And number 1, I do think I want to see this Relic, and not the old
I
one.
want to see that. Yeah.
Natalia Erica James's feature debut uses a haunted house horror tropes to relay a haunting, melancholy rumination on dementia's devastating effects on the afflicted and their loved ones. Let's see. For those who have ever lost a parent to illness, be it cancer or Alzheimer's, it hits close to home.
So, have you ever seen The Taking of Deborah Logan?
No.
It deals with the same issue, and it's really good. And I don't know if I could watch another movie about that subject.
It's
sad. It's
that's
very
what's
sad.
kept me
Yeah.
from Relic, because I think it looks really good, and I don't know. There's a very good book called The Monsters We Make. It's a new release book by, I forget the author's name, and I can't finish it. I knew what I was getting into.
Yeah.
And I'm reading a passage the other day. Danielle looks at me, and I'm like, I guess I'm like positively green. I didn't know I was showing anything. She's like, "What's the matter?" I'm like, "Nothing. I don't know." Put the book down. I run into the bathroom and I throw up. So there's just some things that hit too close to home, even though they may be insanely good, and they're a good view or a good read for others, you know?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if Relic falls into that category for me or not. I mean, I have to deal with every Sunday Langan's Alzheimer issues, so it may hit a little close to home for
Oh
me.
my God, where am I?
Who is that?
You're John Langan. This is the
Oh,
love.
I know who I am, but I just I could swear that's Mike Davis on the screen, and I'm asking myself, what
mistake did I make?
Not myself. Right, exactly. Why am I here with Mike Davis?
All right,
I mean,
I'm going to finish on a good note. Final comment of 2020. Whitney Treble says, "The Dark and the Wicked was a movie night pick. We're paying attention, Mike. Really."
Don't humor him. Don't encourage him, Whitney. That's a bad idea. Don't. Yeah.
All right. Sincerely, for those of you who are Patreons, you will see us one last time on a non-recorded Patreon hangout. This is the $10 and up level on the 30th, Wednesday, at a different night, but at the same time, 9 Eastern. Just watch your Patreon announcements for that.
So, Mike, I don't know.
Yeah.
You left early on the last Patreon.
That's
early.
yeah.
I was there for 2 hours. You guys were
I
there
think that
for
went
4.
on all night.
We went till 2:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I left, and then I was hearing about all these other conversations. I'm like, wow, they must have been on a really long time.
Yeah, you know,
left at
Kat
12:30.
Pulver emailed me, and she's like, "Yeah, we were really ragging on Langan." So I'm like, "Oh, that's good."
How dare you? I will have my vengeance on all of. I mean, happy 2020, everyone.
Happy 2021.
My point is that if you do the Patreon,
Hangout.
you think you're getting a 2-hour chat.
You're at
now.
least getting 2 hours locked in a room with these people, including me, and probably 4. You can stay as long as you want, or you can leave.
Yeah.
Or you can
Or not.
be sensible, like some of them, and leave after 3 minutes. Oh, I gotta go. I forgot I had to wash my hair.
What are you doing the next one?
Well, we usually be doing it on Thursdays, but we're going to do it on Wednesday this week. That would be the 30th at 9 p.m. Eastern. I will remind you panelists in an email, and I will remind the Patreons tomorrow in a Patreon blast email, whatever. So
I'm going to the family farm this week.
The funny farm? Wait, what kind
Family
of farm?
farm.
I was like, man, my mind was just
The body
reeling with sarcastic replies for that one. So, yeah, good luck, Pete. But last thing I want to say in 2020 to all of you watching and listening is that, and this includes you guys and the panelists that are not here. No kidding. All sarcasm down to 0%. I really appreciate you guys very much. I really appreciate the conversations that we have. I really appreciate you doing this with me every Sunday. And I really appreciate the Patreons for keeping me doing this instead of having to do a job putting widgets together or something, because I think more people find this fulfilling than me putting widgets together. At least it seems that way. So thank you, Patreons, for that. Thank you for everyone who watches and listens. If you're not a Patreon, it doesn't take much, and I hope you'll consider it. There's 5, 10, and upper levels per month. So that all said, John, Rick, Melissa, Pete, I hope you guys also saw the post from yesterday on Facebook about you guys and everybody else. And I really appreciate you all very much. Really appreciate everyone who is watching and listening very much. And I guess we will see you all, except for the ones who are on here on Wednesday, in 2021. And Happy New Year.
See everyone next year.
Yeah, see you all in
Except
the
for you
future.
guys.